It's been a little bit more than 5 years now since I first drove a Cadillac CT6 from Cleveland to Chicago to Memphis with the first generation version of General Motors Super Cruise system. That was the first hands-free, completely designed as a hands-free system, driver assist system, designed to let you go on the drive on highways, on long highway trips, engage the system, and be able to take your hands off the wheel while still watching the road and being ready to take over at any time. Since that time, GM has now expanded availability of Super Cruise to quite a few more models. By the end of this year, by the end of 2023, there should be about 20 or so GM models that have Super Cruise availability. Most of those have the new second generation version of Super Cruise. Some, like the Cadillac XT6 and the Chevy Bolt EUV, still have a slightly upgraded version of the first one. The second generation one is better because it's built on GM's vehicle intelligence platform, which allows for over-the-air software updates. And this Cadillac CT5, the 2023 CT5, which by the way is one of my favorite Cadillacs, is equipped with that VIP electrical architecture and the ability to over-the-air update the Super Cruise. And it's got a lot more capability. They've expanded the so-called operational design domain, or ODD, of Super Cruise. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we're on the road. But let's take this out, give it a shot, and see what Super Cruise can do now that maybe it couldn't do 5 years ago. The CT5 is Cadillac's current mid-size premium luxury sedan. This particular one that I'm driving is the 550T model. With all-wheel drive, so it has the 3-liter twin turbocharged V6 and all-wheel drive, and it's also the premium trim level. And the CT5 in general, across the board, has a really premium premium feel to it, much more so than the prior generation CTS did. Got touchscreen interface here with a good selection of physical controls as well for climate control, wireless charging pad down here, and a Bose audio system. The Super Cruise, I still think, is the best hands-free driving system on the market today, driver assist system. I'm still dubious on the whole prospect of supervised hands-free driving systems, but as they go so far, this is the best one out there. They've got the best performance and also the best interface design. So to activate it, you activate the cruise control, the adaptive cruise control, and then press another button here on the steering wheel. And the light bar here shines blue when it's in ready mode. When the system is turned on, but it's not active yet. So right now, the red there was indicating because I'm on an off-ramp, or on a ramp between two different stretches of highway. It cannot operate here. So the system is designed to operate on divided highways, on rural highways right now. They've expanded the availability, the ODD of it. When it first came out on that CT6 back in 2017, you could operate it on about 130,000 miles of divided highways across North America that had been pre-mapped. Then over time, they've increased it. They increased it to about 200,000 miles, and they've recently increased it to 400,000 miles. Although this particular car doesn't yet have that upgrade to the 400,000 miles. They're rolling that out first on the full-size SUVs. So when I activate the system, the light bar turns green here. I can also see it in the instrument cluster and also in the heads-up display. And when it's green, I can take my hands off the wheel. There's an infrared camera here on the steering column that's looking at me to make sure it's looking for my head position and my eye gaze. So if I look away from the road for more than a few seconds, it starts to give an alert. And right now, it's also doing automatic overtaking. This is one of the latest new features that GM has introduced into the second generation Super Cruise. When you're following a vehicle that is below whatever your set speed was, the sensors will look and check if it's all clear. If it is, it will
do a lane change automatically, as it just did. And then after it completes the overtake maneuver, when it's clear, which it's doing right now, it was just indicating, okay, it was still too close to the vehicle that I just passed. I can also trigger a lane change by just tapping the turn signal stalk. But the system utilizes 5 radar sensors, a long-range radar sensor in the front in the grille, plus 4 more medium-range sensors that are in the front corners and in the rear corners. The rear corner sensors are also used for the blind spot monitoring system and cross-traffic alert. And the front sensors help with detecting cut-ins. So as you're driving down the road, if a vehicle goes to pull into the lane in front of you, into a gap in front of you, the sensors will detect that, and it'll automatically back off a little bit. It also uses 4 cameras, one that's mounted up here behind the windshield, 2 on the sides under the mirrors, and then another one in the back to detect your position in the lane. And it does a really good job of keeping the car centered in the lane. And then the 5th sort of pseudo sensor that it uses is those maps that I mentioned, that both are used to determine when the system is allowed to activate based on its on your location, but also they operate as a look-ahead sensor. So the system is looking at the maps, looking 1.5 to 2 miles down the road, looking for curves in the road, and based on whatever your current vehicle speed is, if it determines that your speed is a little, the map has information about the curve geometry, the radius of the curve and the angle, banking of the curve. And if it thinks your speed is maybe a little bit too high to safely go through that curve, what it'll do is it will automatically back off your speed a little bit as you approach that curve. And then once you get through the curve, it'll automatically resume your speed, take you back up to your speed. And we may see that coming up in a minute or so here. But for now, the sensors do a really good job of keeping the vehicle centered in the lane. There's also the latest map update that expands the operational area to 400,000 miles of roads. Also includes a lot of 2-lane rural roads and suburban roads. So it's no longer limited to just highways. Like I said, this particular car doesn't have that update yet. They're rolling that out gradually, starting with full-size SUVs like the Cadillac Escalade and the Chevy Tahoe and GMC Yukon. And then they'll be rolling it out to other models with the 2nd generation Super Cruise over the course of the next few months. So one of the things I really like about Super Cruise is, as I said, the human-machine interface. So the light bar is something that really helps a lot in knowing what the current state of the system is. There's no ambiguity. I've complained when driving Ford's Blue Cruise system. They don't have a light bar. They just use icons in the instrument cluster, and particularly on the F-150, they have a predominantly blue color theme for the instrument cluster, and then the icons are a darker blue. And it's not always obvious when the system is asking you to take control when it's changing modes. If it's going somewhere where the system cannot safely operate, and it asks you to take over control. On the Ford system, it's sometimes ambiguous as to which mode you're in. Whereas this system, okay, so right now the system has just dropped my speed as I'm going through this curve down to 66 miles per hour, 65. And as I exit this curve, it will speed back up to my previous set speed. So this is an example of predictive speed control. Ford is starting to roll this out now with Blue Cruise. It's not out there in very many vehicles yet, but that's something that should be on any system like this. So as I said, with the light bar, it's always immediately obvious what the state of the system is. When it's green, the system's active and you're in hands-free mode. If it's blue, it means the system's turned on, but it's not yet engaged because it's waiting for you to get the car centered in the lane. And then when it goes green, you can take your hands off the wheel. And then finally, red is for alerts when it needs you to take over. And because of where it's located here in the top segment of the steering wheel, it's always visible in your peripheral vision when you're watching the road. And it's very clear when it changes from blue to green to red. Another feature that some of the more high-end GM models have as well is haptic feedback in the seat. So in this car, when it's going to do an automatic overtake or an automatic lane change, it will vibrate the seat below me on either side. So if it's going to move over to the left to do a lane change, it will vibrate on the left side of the seat cushion, or on the right for if it's going to go to the right. And then if it wants me to take control when it's going red on the light bar, it will also vibrate the seat on both sides and let me know, to make sure that it's clear to me that, hey, I need you to take over control, because this is a supervised system. It is not self-driving. It is a driver assist system. It's a comfort convenience system. So here's another case where it's going to start dropping my speed down, I think, a little bit. Maybe not. Okay, so I guess it's okay on this curve. This is a little bit larger radius curve than the previous one. So it's maintaining my speed. For lane changes, you have two options. And they're also, you can also go into the settings and adjust what it's going to do. So if you don't want it to do automatic overtaking, then you can turn that off in the settings. So right now, I'm going to tap on the turn signal, and it says auto lane change in the instrument cluster. And as soon as it says that it's clear of the vehicle behind me, it does the lane change. It executes the lane change. And then if I want to go back in the other lane, I can just tap the turn signal in the other direction. I'm going to ramp up the speed a little bit here so I can catch up and do another automatic lane change. So the automatic lane changing, it doesn't, the driver doesn't have to initiate it. It will initiate that by itself. But it does give you an alert. It vibrates the seat for that, and also lets you know in the instrument cluster that it wants to do a lane change. And you have the option to cancel that by just, again, tapping that turn signal. So if I don't want it to change lanes, it'll do that. So as you can see, the system works really well at just driving down the highway, no problem at all. So as we're approaching the traffic in front of us, it's going a little bit slower than our current set speed. There's a car coming up on my left-hand side here. So it's not, the system knows that. Okay, so now it just vibrated the seat below me, and it's got auto lane change on in the instrument cluster. There's traffic coming up in the left-hand lane, so it's going to wait. That traffic's going quite a bit faster. It's going to wait for that traffic to clear. Now that there's a gap, it's executing the lane change. And when it does that, it puts on the turn signal so that basically it follows the rules as it should when you're driving. And now that I'm clear of that car that it wanted to overtake, it just vibrated the seat on my right, and it's moving back over to the right lane. So the system is designed to follow proper lane etiquette. It will generally only overtake on the left, and then as soon as it's clear of the traffic ahead, it will move back into the right-hand lane again and keep the left lane clear for vehicles that are passing. And with the driver monitor system, this is something that other manufacturers are using now. GM was the first to do it with Super Cruise, another automatic overtake to get past this truck. The driver monitor system is, like I said, is watching my face, watching my eyes. If I was having a medical emergency and lost consciousness, or if I was getting drowsy and falling asleep, it would be able to recognize that my eyes were closing, or my head was tilting in a way that indicated I was inattentive. And in that case, it would start to alert me to take back control. If I was having a medical emergency, like a heart attack or stroke or diabetic coma, then the system, if I didn't respond within about 20 seconds, it would start, actually sooner than that, after about, I think, at highway speeds, after about 5 or 6 seconds, it will start to slow the car down. And as it starts to slow the vehicle down, it will turn on the hazard warning lamps. And if I continue to be non-responsive, it will bring the vehicle to a full safe stop. And then again, if I continue to be unresponsive, even after the car comes to a stop, the OnStar system will actually prompt me. It'll come on and say, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" And if I've lost consciousness or fallen asleep or something like that, then the system will automatically call for emergency help, call an ambulance to come and assist. So the system, I think GM has done a great job with this system, with really making it reliable. It's very predictable with what it's going to do, and it does a great job of taking some of the workload off. Now, personally, I'm going to stop right now, disengage the system, and it flashed red as I tapped on the brake pedal to disengage the system because I'm going to turn around and head back. But one of the concerns I have about systems like this, where the driver has to supervise, is that humans are actually not very good at supervising automation. And even though a system like this is removing some of the workload from the driver, so, in terms of controlling the vehicle, it does introduce new cognitive workloads. Because when you are supervising as a human, when you're supervising a system that is working well most of the time, you start to become complacent. And this is one of the challenges with Tesla vehicles, with autopilot. Tesla doesn't really use a driver. They don't use a driver monitor system like this. In fact, they don't use driver monitoring at all for autopilot, except for a torque sensor in the steering wheel, which is another major difference that the GM has from some of its competitors. So when humans are supervising automation, they tend to become complacent, and then the system if something goes wrong with the system, if you're not paying attention all the time, it takes a while. It can take a while to re-engage. So, if you were looking away from the road or looking down, texting on your phone, or doing anything like that, it can take a while for you to regain your situational awareness of what's happening around you if you're not paying attention. And so, in order to maintain that level of attention, even when you're not actively doing the driving, does require some more mental work, some more cognitive workload than you would have. It's a different kind of cognitive workload than you have when you're driving, when you're actively engaged in the driving task. And so I personally, even though I've used Super Cruise quite a bit over the last 5.5 years, as well as using other systems like Ford's Blue Cruise, Lincoln Active Glide, various other systems from other manufacturers, I still never feel entirely comfortable using these systems. But as far as they go, this one remains the best. One other thing I mentioned, with Tesla, for example, they don't use an infrared camera. They have a standard visible light camera that's mounted up by the mirror, but they don't use that for autopilot. They only use it for customers that are using the full self-driving beta software. And the system that they have, because it's just a visible light camera, it's also not very it's not very robust, and it's actually quite easy to fool by just holding up a two-dimensional picture of the driver in front of the camera. You can very easily fool that. The folks at Consumer Reports have demonstrated that. Others have demonstrated that. Whereas with the infrared camera, it works similarly to the systems that Apple uses for their Face ID. It's a lower resolution version of that because it's not looking for authentication, but it is looking at your face, where you're facing, where your eyes are looking, and where the position of your head. And it is much more robust, and it also works at night, which the Tesla system does not. And it also works if you're wearing polarized sunglasses. It can see through polarized sunglasses because the infrared light can see through that. so it knows where your eyes are looking. And the other thing that the Tesla as well as Ford also does is that they use just a torque sensor in the steering wheel, and so if it's looking for your hands on the steering wheel, then you actually have to occasionally wiggle the wheel, and if you don't, then a lot of times it'll give you false positives. I've recently had a chance to try a Tesla with a FSD beta, and it was giving me a lot. The Tesla system is still a hands-on system. It's not designed to be hands-off, and so it's looking for the wheel to move a little bit from time to time. And if you don't, then it's constantly alerting you, which is very annoying. Whereas this system has capacitive sensors in the steering wheel rim, so it knows when it wants you to put your hands on the wheel. It knows when you're actually touching the wheel. The wheel doesn't have to move. All you have to do is if you're touching the wheel, it knows that. So it's a much more reliable system. It doesn't nag you quite as much as other systems do. And again, this is something that I think Ford should have done differently. They did not include capacitive sensors. Stellantis, which has not yet launched a hands-free system, actually does have capacitive sensors in their hands-on system, which is more similar to Tesla Autopilot. And that system works really well. It knows when your hands are touching the wheel, and so it's not nagging you unless your hands are actually both off the wheel. So we're coming up to a split in the road here, and I need to go off to the left. So I'm going to tap the turn signal, indicate I want a left lane change. So it saw the car, this truck here in front of us to the left. It slowed down because it saw the closing speed that we had, that we were likely to overtake it. So it slowed down, pulled in behind it, and now it's actually pulling over into the left lane to overtake this truck. And I think this is going to be a case where as we approach this curve, it's going to slow down a little bit. Yeah, it's doing that now, so it's slowing down. It's probably going to drop. There we go. Right now, the blue is flashing as I'm going through this curve. It doesn't want to engage the system yet while it's on the curve. But once I'm on the straight here, and it sees I'm in the center of the road, it turns green. Now I can take my hands off the wheel again. I'm going to tap the turn signal here to move over to the right for the next split in the road here. And I'm going to go over to the right one more time. So this Cadillac CT5 Premium, the CT5 starts at about a little over $42,000, and this particular model with the more powerful engine, all-wheel drive, premium package, Super Cruise, and a bunch of other options, prices out just over $66,000, including delivery charge. And I think, as in that market segment of mid-size premium sedans, luxury sedans, I think it's very competitively priced. And I think this is a great car. I think it's really pleasant to drive. It's got plenty of performance, gets decent fuel economy, and with features like Super Cruise, I think it's definitely got some significant advantages over some of the competition. One of the unique features that Super Cruise has compared to most of its competition is the ability to function while you're towing a trailer on a truck or an SUV. If you do have a trailer hooked up, it disables the automatic lane changing capability. But what it does is when you're accelerating and decelerating, the system actually looks at what is the engine load and what is the actual rate of acceleration or deceleration, and compares that to what it would be when the vehicle's unloaded, and it automatically adjusts the gap to other vehicles based on the estimate it makes of the trailer weight. So if you've got a 2,000-pound trailer, you're going to be able to accelerate quite a bit faster than if you have a 10,000-pound trailer. And so if you're towing a heavier trailer, it will leave a bigger gap to the vehicles in front of you because it knows that it's going to take longer to slow down if it needs to respond to changes from the leading vehicles. And so that's another really good safety feature that GM has built in. All right, so that is the 2023 Cadillac CT5 Premium with Super Cruise. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you next time.